For thousands of years the galaxy carried a secret. At the far edge of known space, where stars burned dim and silence ruled, a strange fleet drifted in darkness. The ships were massive, built with steel that looked older than any living empire. Their hulls were scarred as if they had survived wars long forgotten. No lights blinked, no engines moved, yet they did not decay. They slept, waiting for something unknown. Many explorers passed through that region, but few dared to come close. Stories spread in whispers, about the ghost fleet, about the dead ships that never rusted, about the shadow that made sensors fail. Most stayed away, but one alien expedition broke the silence. The explorers belonged to the Valor, a young but curious race. Their ships were small compared to the ancient giants they discovered. They circled the silent vessels with fear and wonder. Scanners revealed something that froze their blood. Inside the massive ships lay chambers, rows upon rows of sealed glass coffins. And inside each coffin rested a figure. Not alien, not machine but human. The Valor had heard of humans only in myths. Some old records called them warriors. Some called them destroyers. Others claimed they had vanished before the rise of the Council itself. No one believed they were real. But here they were, thousands, maybe millions, preserved in cold sleep. The leader of the expedition, Captain Rel, stared at the readings with disbelief. "How can they still be alive?" he whispered. The machines inside the ships were still working, even after countless years. They kept the bodies frozen, their hearts silent, their minds trapped between life and death. The Valor crew trembled as they sent drones into the ancient vessels. The halls were dark and endless, walls covered with unknown writing. Every step echoed like thunder in the silence. The drones floated past the frozen chambers, shining weak light on pale faces. Each face looked calm, but each one carried a presence too heavy to ignore. Even sleeping, the humans seemed dangerous. One drone stopped at a control station. Strange symbols glowed faintly on a cracked screen. Nobody could read them, but one phrase repeated again and again in red light. The translation came back simple and terrifying: "Do not wake them." The crew panicked. Why would ancient builders leave such a warning? What danger did these humans carry? But curiosity was stronger than fear. The Valor scientists believed they could unlock the mystery, maybe even use the knowledge for power. Against the warning, they touched the controls. At first nothing happened. The ships remained silent, cold, dead. Then, deep inside the vessel, a sound echoed, a low hum, like the heartbeat of a giant returning to life. Lights flickered along the halls. Doors that had been shut for ages opened with a hiss. The Valor shouted in fear, pulling their drones back, but it was too late. The system had been waiting for this moment. One chamber unlocked. Mist filled the air as the glass cover slid open. Inside, the human body shivered. For the first time in thousands of years, a human chest rose with breath. The eyes opened, burning with a light no alien had ever seen. Captain Rel felt his throat tighten. The human was tall, stronger than any Valor soldier. His skin carried scars from battles fought long before any Valor civilization was born. The human stood slowly, looking around with calm but piercing eyes. He did not speak. He did not need to. The aliens felt the weight of his presence. This was not just another species. This was something greater, something older, something dangerous. The awakened human placed his hand on the ancient console. At once the ship responded. Systems long dead roared back to life. Lights blazed across the vessel. The humming grew louder, echoing like thunder across the dark void. The frozen chambers all around began to glow. More humans stirred inside, their eyes moving behind closed lids, their hands twitching. The Valor realized the horror. This was not one human. This was the beginning of many. An entire army was about to rise. Panic spread through the alien crew. Some wanted to flee, but the ships held them like a cage. The human looked at them, and though he said no words, the message was clear. "You have awakened us. and nothing will ever be the same again. Outside, the galaxy still turned, unaware of what was happening in the dark. But soon it would know. Soon every world would feel the tremor. The humans had slept for ages, locked away in silence. But now the first chamber was open. Now the first soldier had stepped forward. And the galaxy itself shook at his awakening. The silence inside the ancient ship was heavy, broken only by the slow hum of machines returning to life. The first human stood tall in the dim light. His breath misted the air, and his eyes scanned the dark chamber with a calm that carried hidden danger. Around him, the Valari explorers watched in terror. None dared to speak. They knew the stories of humans were only legends, yet the living proof stood before them now. His body was strong, built for battle. His skin carried scars, not of accidents, but of weapons. Even asleep for thousands of years, he looked like a warrior ready for war. The human raised his hand and touched the console again. Symbols appeared across the old screen. The language was ancient, long forgotten by the galaxy, but he understood it. His fingers moved with memory, as if no time had passed. The ship groaned and the walls shook. Lights flickered alive in long corridors. The Valari backed away, their small frames trembling. One whispered to his captain, "We must leave. This is wrong. This is not for us." But Captain Rel did not move. His eyes were fixed on the human. Fear mixed with a strange pull of curiosity. What power did this creature hold? Then the human turned his gaze toward the aliens. His eyes were sharp, piercing, almost glowing in the dim light. He did not speak their language, but one look was enough. The Valari felt as if he could see their thoughts, their weakness, their fear. One soldier raised his weapon, shaking, but the captain stopped him. To fire on this being felt like calling death upon themselves. The human tilted his head slightly, as if studying them, as if deciding whether they were threat or prey. Then he moved past them without a word. The ship answered his presence. Doors opened before him. Long-dead systems began to glow. The Valari followed at a distance, too afraid to be near, too curious to turn away. He walked through the endless halls lined with frozen chambers. Each chamber held another human, locked in cold sleep. The Valari counted hundreds in just one corridor. And they knew this ship was only one of many. What kind of civilization had sealed away so many warriors? The human stopped at a larger chamber. His hand pressed against the glass. Inside was another figure, a woman this time. Her face was calm, her armor ancient yet untouched by time. The man's eyes softened, but only for a moment. He touched the console again, and the chamber hissed. Mist poured out as the cover slowly lifted. The woman's chest rose with a sharp breath. Her eyes snapped open, filled with the same strange light. Two humans now stood awake, and the air grew heavier. The Valari could barely breathe under the weight of their presence. The woman looked at the man, and without speaking, they seemed to understand each other. Memories of war and loss filled their minds, not forgotten, only waiting. She stepped out, standing as steady as the first, her gaze sweeping over the aliens. The Valari felt smaller than ever, like insects before giants. Then the ship's voice spoke. It was deep, metallic, yet alive. The alien translators struggled to capture the meaning, but the message was clear. Phase 1 complete. Awakening sequence initiated. The words echoed through every hall. Chambers across the ship began to glow. One by one, humans stirred inside. Fingers twitched, eyes flickered, hearts began to beat again. The Valari panicked. What had they done? By touching one console, they had set into motion something unstoppable. Some of the aliens begged their captain to flee. They wanted to escape before more humans awakened. But the ship systems locked every exit. Their own ships, waiting outside, sent urgent calls. Energy was building in the ancient vessels. The ghost fleet was no longer silent. It was coming alive. Captain Rel realized the truth. There was no way to run. The galaxy would soon feel what they had awakened. The first man and woman walked side by side now. Their steps echoed on the steel floor. They did not look lost. They did not look confused. It was as if they had always been ready for this moment. The Vaari noticed their scars again, scars of endless battles. These were not explorers or dreamers. These were soldiers who had survived wars no alien remembered. If one or two humans felt so heavy, what would happen when thousands awakened? The hum of the ship grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. The chambers opened one after another. Humans gasped for air, blinking into the new age. Their voices were low at first, strange and rough, but soon they called out names, orders and warnings in their forgotten tongue. The Vaari could not understand the words, but they felt the meaning. These were not weak beings. These were survivors, and they were ready to fight again. Captain Rel finally spoke, his voice shaking. "We must contact the Council. The galaxy must know." But even as he said the words, he wondered if it would matter. The Council had never faced such beings. No fleet had ever fought such warriors. What would warnings change? The humans were already here. They were already waking. The first human turned his eyes toward the captain. For the first time he spoke. His voice was deep and sharp, the words ancient, yet filled with command. The alien translators broke and failed, unable to carry the meaning. But the feeling was clear. It was not a greeting. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The promise of war. The awakening spread through the ancient ship like a storm. Chambers hissed open, one after another, filling the cold air with mist. Humans gasped for breath after thousands of years of silence. Their eyes opened sharp and clear, not weak from sleep but strong as if time had never touched them. The Vaari crew stood frozen, their hearts racing. They had not discovered a forgotten race. They had unleashed an army. The ship's voice continued to echo through the halls. Phase 2 in progress. Systems restoring. Memory logs accessible. Ancient consoles lit up with streams of data. The Vaari translators worked desperately, piecing together broken words. At first the meaning was unclear, but then the story began to appear. The truth of the humans was revealed not by their mouths, but by their own history. Long ago, before the Council even existed, the galaxy was ruled by great empires. These empires fought endless wars for power, using fleets that stretched across stars. But none were feared like humanity. Humans did not build the largest fleets or the strongest weapons. Yet they carried something no other race understood, a will that could not be broken. They fought not for territory alone but for survival, and they never surrendered. Entire empires had fallen before them, unable to match their fury. The logs showed images of ancient battles. Human ships, smaller than their enemies, moved with speed and cunning. Alien armadas crumbled against them. Entire worlds burned. The Vaari scientists trembled as they watched. Every record spoke of destruction, of planets erased, of empires begging for peace. But peace never lasted. Humans fought until the enemy was gone, until no threat remained. The galaxy at that time was drowning in fire, and at the center of it all was humanity. One entry showed something stranger. It was not only war that defined them. Humans also built wonders. They shaped worlds, raised cities in the sky, created machines that even now seemed impossible. They were not just warriors. They were creators. But when war came, they turned everything they built into weapons. Cities became fortresses. Machines became soldiers. Even the stars were turned into fire. The Vaari whispered in fear. If this was true, then the galaxy they knew existed only because humans vanished. But the question remained, why had they gone into sleep? Why were they hidden in these frozen ships? The answer came in the final records. The last war was unlike any other. Humanity fought an enemy not named, an enemy so great that even they could not destroy it completely. The logs did not show the enemy's face, only shadows and fire. Billions of humans died, and in the end, their leaders made a choice. If they remained awake, the war would never end. The galaxy itself would die. So they chose silence. They sealed their armies in cryo chambers, locked their fleets in darkness, and left a warning for the future. Do not wake them. The Veari now understood the truth. The humans were not trapped here. They had trapped themselves. They had chosen to sleep so the galaxy could survive. For thousands of years, no one had dared disturb them. Until now. And now it was too late. The awakening had begun. The humans moved through the halls, gathering, speaking in their lost language. Their voices carried the weight of command, of discipline, of soldiers who had never forgotten their duty. The first man, the one who woke alone, seemed to lead them. He spoke with sharp gestures, and the others obeyed without question. The woman who had awakened second stood at his side, her presence as strong as his own. Together they walked toward the heart of the ship. The Veari followed at a distance, recording everything, though every instinct told them to run. At the ship's core, a vast chamber opened. It was filled with weapons, ancient, deadly, glowing with power the Veari could not measure. The humans moved among them like returning to a home they had left yesterday. They strapped on armor, activated blades of light, carried rifles older than the council itself. To the Veari, these were relics. To the humans they were tools. Tools meant to kill. Then the ship's voice spoke again, louder than before. External presence detected. Council fleets approaching. The Veari gasped. Word had already spread. The Galactic Council, the rulers of the modern age, had sent ships to investigate. Perhaps they wanted to contain the danger. Perhaps they wanted to erase it before it grew. But the timing was too late. The humans were already awake. Captain Rel's hands shook as he sent a message to the fleet outside. Do not attack. You do not understand. These are the humans from the old wars. If you fire, we all die. But even as he sent the warning, he doubted anyone would listen. The council had never feared anything before. They believed their fleets were unstoppable. They believed history was only stories. They would soon learn history was alive. The humans stood ready. Their weapons hummed with power. Their armor gleamed under the ship's new lights. The leader looked toward the stars, his face calm but unyielding. He spoke a single line, his words lost to the aliens, but the meaning was clear. The time of silence was over. The war of humanity was about to begin again. The Veari felt their stomachs twist with fear. They had uncovered the forgotten war, and they knew the galaxy would soon drown in it once more. The news of the awakening spread faster than light. What began as whispers among explorers became fear in every council hall. Fleets patrolling the outer systems received fragments of transmissions, images of humans stepping out of cryo chambers, armored and armed, walking like ancient kings returned from the grave. The Veari captain's desperate warnings reached the council, but most leaders did not believe them. They laughed at the idea of humans, thinking it was only an old myth used to scare children. Yet the images could not be denied. The faces of humans, their scars, their weapons, were now seen by billions. The galaxy trembled. The Galactic Council met in secret session. Inside the vast chamber sat rulers of many races, some proud, some terrified. The debate began with fire. One voice shouted for immediate destruction. If these humans wake fully, we will all be slaves to their will. History says they burned empires. We cannot allow that to happen again. Another voice demanded restraint. They chose to sleep. They did not conquer in the end. Perhaps they only wished to live in peace. But fear always spoke louder than reason. Most leaders agreed that humanity was a threat too great to ignore. The council ordered a massive fleet to surround the ghost ships. Thousands of warships were mobilized, forming a blockade around the region. They carried the newest weapons of the age, weapons the council believed no force could resist. Admirals boasted that even if the stories of humans were true, they would crush them before they fully awoke. Yet deep in their hearts, doubt whispered. Why had their ancestors left a warning carved into the stars? Why had every race avoided this region for millennia? Inside the human ship, the awakening continued. Chambers opened in endless rows. Soldiers stepped out with steady breath, their eyes sharp, their bodies strong. They carried themselves like an army returning from battle, not like survivors waking from sleep. The Valor crew watched in silent terror. Captain Rel tried once more to send warnings to the Council, but the ship blocked all transmissions now. The humans had seized control of every system. Rel knew what the Council would do. He knew they would come with fire. And he knew fire would not be enough. The first human leader stood at the command deck. His armor was marked with symbols of rank, and his gaze carried the weight of command. Beside him stood the woman who had awakened second, her presence calm yet unyielding. They did not need words to lead. Their soldiers obeyed by instinct, as if they had waited centuries for this moment. The leader placed his hand on the console, and the ship's engines roared. Outside, the silent giant began to move. For the first time in thousands of years, a human warship stirred. The Council fleets detected the movement instantly. Alarms echoed through their ships as the ancient vessel came alive. Its sheer size dwarfed them, yet its engines moved with grace. Weapons across its hull began to glow. The admirals barked orders to hold fire, to wait, but the younger captains were too afraid. One ship fired a test shot. The blast of energy struck the human vessel, and vanished against its shields. The alien crews gasped. The shield had not weakened. It had not even flickered. Inside the council chamber, panic grew. Some leaders screamed for retreat. Others demanded a full assault. The voices clashed until the chamber shook with anger and fear. But the humans did not wait for decisions. Their awakening spread across more ships. One after another, the ghost fleet came alive, engines burning, lights blazing. The darkness of the outer rim filled with the fire of ancient warships. The galaxy had not seen such power in millennia. The Valor crew stood trapped, forced to witness history. They watched as human soldiers prepared for battle, strapping on armor, sharpening blades of light, charging weapons with deadly calm. No one looked confused. No one looked weak. It was as if they had been dreaming only for a moment, not for thousands of years. Captain Rel whispered to his crew, "We are watching the return of a storm. The galaxy is not ready." The council fleet now surrounded the humans completely, their formation tight, their weapons locked. A final order came from the admirals. They demanded the humans surrender and return to sleep. But no answer came. The humans stood silent. Their ships powered up. The silence was heavier than words, heavier than threats. It was a silence that spoke of war. At that moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Billions across countless worlds watched the unfolding standoff on their screens. Some prayed the humans would accept peace. Others prayed they would be destroyed quickly. But deep inside, every being felt the same truth. The humans had not returned to bow. They had returned to stand. The human leader finally raised his hand. His soldiers followed in perfect unity. The consoles blazed with power. The ship's weapons charged, humming like thunder before a storm. The council fleets tensed, their admirals screaming for restraint, but their fear was stronger. The first alien missile streaked through the void, heading straight for the human flagship. The impact shook the stars, yet when the fire cleared, the human ship stood untouched. Its shields burned bright, as if mocking the attack. Then came the reply. The ancient guns glowed red, and with one blast, an entire council battleship vanished in silence. No wreckage remained. Only dust. The galaxy reacted not with words, but with fear. For the first time in thousands of years, humanity had answered. The council fleets burned bright in the darkness of space. Thousands of ships surrounded the human vessels, their weapons ready, their captains tense. Yet inside the ancient warships, humanity was fully awake now. The cryo chambers had opened row after row, releasing soldiers, engineers, commanders, and leaders who had slept for centuries. They stepped onto the decks with calm eyes, not panicked, not confused. They walked as if they had only closed their eyes yesterday. The galaxy stared in shock. The first human leader stood on the command bridge of his ship. His name was not yet known to the aliens, but his presence was enough to make them shiver. He wore ancient battle armor, scarred and heavy, but it fit him like a second skin. Beside him stood the woman who had awakened second, her gaze sharp and steady. Together they commanded silence, not by words, but by the way they stood. Around them, soldiers prepared with perfect discipline. Weapons were checked, armor tightened, and formations set. The ship had been asleep for millennia, but its army was ready for war within minutes. The council sent message after message. They demanded surrender. They promised mercy if the humans returned to cryo sleep. They threatened destruction if they resisted. Yet not a single human replied. The communication channels stayed silent. Only the deep hum of human warships answered, a sound that echoed through the void like a heartbeat. Silence became their language, and that silence was heavier than any words. The council captains began to sweat, feeling the weight of that unanswered defiance. Inside the human ships, more systems awakened. Massive engines roared, shaking the void. Shield barriers formed like glowing walls of fire. Weapons charged, ancient but terrifying. Each human vessel lit up one after another until the ghost fleet became a blazing formation of war. From a distance, it looked like a storm had risen at the edge of the galaxy. For the first time in ages, the humans stood again, their fleet alive, their warriors ready. Captain Rel of the Valor watched in dread. He had begged the council to show restraint, but no one listened. He saw the humans move with unity, their soldiers locking into ranks, their officers giving silent orders, their leaders calm and certain. There was no fear in their eyes. They were not an army rising for the first time. They were an army returning to their place. Rel whispered to himself, "They are not waking to find their world. They are waking to take the galaxy." The council admirals, still believing in their numbers, ordered the blockade to tighten. Warships pressed closer, their weapons glowing. They tried to intimidate, to show strength, but the humans did not move back. Instead, the lead human vessel advanced slowly, its massive hull cutting through the blockade as if daring anyone to stop it. The alien ships opened fire. Blasts of energy, missiles, plasma beams, all struck at once. Explosions lit the void like a sun being born. But when the fire cleared, the human ship still moved, untouched, its shields burning with quiet power. The council crews gasped in terror. They had fired enough to destroy a planet, yet the humans walked through it like rain. Then the reply came. One human ship released a single strike. The weapon was silent, a flash of light faster than the eye. An entire alien cruiser vanished, erased from existence. No wreckage, no flame, only empty space where a warship had stood moments before. Panic tore through the council fleets. They had believed humans were legends. Now the legends were real, and they were unstoppable. On worlds across the galaxy, people watched the battle unfold through transmissions. Billions stared at the sight of human warships moving with terrifying grace. Some cheered in secret, hoping these warriors would bring balance against the cruel council. Others prayed in fear, knowing if the humans chose conquest, no race could resist. Every heart felt the same truth. The galaxy had changed forever. The human leader raised his hand, and the fleet moved as one. Their ships advanced in perfect formation, each step of the engines shaking the void. They did not chase, they did not rush. They moved forward with the calm of hunters certain of their prey. Silence still ruled their communication channels, yet every action spoke. They would not surrender. They would not hide. They would not bow. Humanity stood again, and the galaxy would remember. Inside the council chamber, fear boiled into chaos. Some leaders demanded retreat. Others screamed for a full-scale war. But none could agree. Their fleets were already breaking, some captains fleeing, others frozen by fear. For the first time in centuries, the council looked powerless. The humans had not fired much, but the message was clear. Their return was not a question. Their power was not a debate. Their silence was their declaration. Captain Rel watched as more humans stepped into command roles, their faces cold but resolute. He realized something chilling. This was not only the return of soldiers. This was the return of an entire civilization. A civilization that had not forgiven the past, a civilization that had chosen to wake at last. Rel whispered, "The Council believes they can control this, but they are wrong. No one can control humanity. Not now. Not ever." The first human commander looked at the stars beyond the Council fleets. His eyes burned with the memory of old wars. He spoke a single word to his people, a word the Valari translators could not capture. But its meaning rippled through the fleet like fire. It was the word of rising, the word of return. And with that word, humanity stood again. The void was filled with tension so heavy that even the stars seemed silent. Council fleets surrounded the awakened humans in a ring of steel and fire. Thousands of alien warships floated ready, their weapons locked, their admirals shouting orders. The humans, however, stood calm. Their ships glowed with ancient power, shields burning bright, engines humming like the heartbeat of giants. For a moment the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see who would strike first. The Council made the mistake. Fear twisted their hands faster than reason. A barrage of energy blasts, missiles, and plasma waves erupted across the dark void. The firestorm struck the human fleet with enough force to shatter moons. Explosions lit the blackness in waves of burning light. To the alien crews, it felt like victory, but only for a heartbeat. When the fire cleared, the human ships still stood untouched. Their shields shimmered faintly, like calm water disturbed by rain. Not a single hull was breached. Not a single human vessel was harmed. The Council fleets froze in disbelief. Never before had their combined firepower failed so completely. Panic rippled through their lines. The humans answered at last. Their ships shifted formation with flawless unity, like predators circling prey. Then their weapons fired. Beams of light cut through the darkness, moving faster than sensors could track. Entire Council warships vanished in silence, erased as if they had never existed. Cruisers broke apart in moments, fleets scattered as their captains screamed. The humans did not fire wildly. Every shot was precise, every target chosen. It was not war. It was execution. Inside the Valari flagship, Captain Rel watched in horror. He had warned the Council not to provoke them, but no one had listened. Now fleets that had taken centuries to build were falling apart in minutes. He whispered to his crew, "This is not a battle. This is a lesson. They are reminding us who they are." His words were drowned by the cries of alien officers watching their comrades burn. The human leader stood on the bridge of his flagship, his face calm, his eyes sharp. He did not smile, did not shout, did not gloat. To him, this was not revenge or cruelty. It was duty. He gave orders in his ancient tongue, and his people obeyed without hesitation. The woman at his side commanded the flanking vessels, her voice carrying through the fleet like iron. Together, they moved with precision born of endless wars. Their silence was more terrifying than screams. The Council fleets broke under the pressure. Some captains tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless. Others attempted to retreat, only to be hunted down by human fire. The ancient warships moved faster than expected, engines roaring with unnatural strength. No alien ship could escape. One by one, the Council's proud fleets crumbled into dust. Across the galaxy, billions watched the transmissions in disbelief. Entire armadas, once thought invincible, were being erased in minutes by a fleet that had only just awoken. On countless worlds, civilians whispered in fear. Some spoke with awe, calling the humans gods of war. Others wept, believing this was the end of their age. A few even cheered, seeing inhumanities fire the punishment for a council that had ruled too long with arrogance. But all agreed on one thing: the galaxy would never be the same. The fire had returned. Inside the council chambers, chaos reigned. Leaders shouted over one another, demanding explanations, blaming each other, calling for retreat. Some screamed to send more fleets, while others begged to seek peace before all was lost. Yet none could agree. Their strength was already breaking, their unity collapsing. And still, the humans advanced. The human flagship cut through the wreckage of alien fleets with unstoppable calm. Its weapons fired again, vaporizing another line of warships. The leader stood silent, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. He was not fighting just for survival. He was reclaiming something the galaxy had forgotten. His eyes burned with old fury, a fury that had waited in silence for ages. The humans had not returned to be remembered as myths. They had returned to be feared. Captain Rel's heart pounded as he realized what was happening. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. A message carved in fire and silence. He whispered to himself, "They are showing us mercy. If they wanted, no one would be left alive." And in his heart, he knew it was true. The humans could have destroyed everything in their path. Instead, they struck only enough to break fleets, to shatter pride, to remind the galaxy that war had a master. The battle ended quickly. What remained of the Council fleets scattered into the dark, broken and humiliated. Silence filled the void once more, but it was no longer the silence of sleeping ships. It was the silence of fear. The human fleet stood unchallenged, their weapons cooling, their engines glowing. Across every channel, one truth echoed: the humans had returned, and nothing could stop them. The leader of the humans raised his hand once more. His soldiers bowed their heads, waiting for his command. He spoke quietly, his words lost to alien ears, but the meaning was clear. The fire had returned to the stars, and it would not be put out again. The galaxy trembled. And in that trembling, all understood, the age of humanity had begun once more. The galaxy trembled under a silence more terrifying than war. The Council fleets were gone, their armadas shattered into dust, their pride broken beyond repair. Across 1,000 star systems, people whispered in fear, their voices shaking as they asked the same question: what would the humans do now? They had awakened from their endless sleep, destroyed fleets in minutes, and stood unchallenged in the center of the void. Civilizations that once ruled with arrogance now watched with dread. The galaxy itself felt smaller, weaker, and fragile before them. On the bridge of the human flagship, their leader stood with eyes like steel. His face carried no triumph, no cruelty, only quiet purpose. Around him, his people worked with precision, ancient warriors wearing the weight of history on their shoulders. They had awakened not to conquer blindly, but because something far greater pulled them from sleep. Yet to the galaxy watching, their silence was more dangerous than any spoken threat. News spread like fire. Worlds knelt before the idea of human power. Some sent messages of surrender, offering loyalty in exchange for mercy. Others prepared desperate defenses, building fleets, hiding colonies, whispering that humanity would burn everything. The Galactic Council itself fractured. Member species accused one another of weakness, betrayal, and cowardice. Their unity, once unshakable, was crumbling. No one trusted anyone. All feared the humans. But not all feared them in the same way. To some, humanity's return meant salvation. The oppressed races, long crushed under Council rule, saw hope in the fire of the awakened humans. They believed these warriors would break chains and tear down empires. To others, it was the end of freedom itself, for if the humans chose to rule, no power could stop them. The galaxy stood divided, half praying for the humans to lead, half preparing to resist them with all they had. Captain Rel, the Vayari officer who had witnessed the battle, stared at the wreckage of his fleet from the safety of a damaged cruiser. His heart was heavy, his mind torn. He had seen what humanity could do, and he knew the truth no one wanted to admit. The humans had held back. If they had unleashed their full strength, not a single alien ship would have survived. The destruction was not victory, it was a warning. He whispered to himself, "They are not just warriors. They are judges. The galaxy has been weighed, and now it waits for their verdict. On the human flagship, the AI voice echoed across the bridge. It spoke of messages from countless worlds, signals begging for talks, offers of alliance, cries for mercy. The human leader listened in silence. Then he raised his hand, and the room stilled. His words were short, but his people understood. They had not returned to beg, not returned to bargain. They had returned to decide the future of the stars. The galaxy shook not only from fear, but from the awakening of memory. Ancient stories told by the oldest species now felt real. Tales of wars so vast that entire constellations burned, of warriors who fought until the stars themselves dimmed. Those stories had spoken of humanity. Many had dismissed them as myths, but now the myths stood alive, their warships glowing, their warriors awake. The past had stepped into the present, and the future trembled before it. On the council's homeworld, leaders gathered in panic. Their grand halls, once filled with pride, now echoed with fear. Some demanded immediate surrender, others argued for new alliances, while a few still clung to denial, insisting the humans could be defeated with time. But deep down, even the loudest voices knew the truth: they were powerless. The humans were beyond them. No number of fleets, no secret weapon, no hidden alliance could match the fury that had been unleashed. The humans did not rush to strike again. That was what made the galaxy fear them most. They waited. They watched. They prepared. Their silence was the silence of hunters who had all the time in the world. Every world, every empire, every species lived under the weight of that silence. It pressed on their hearts like a mountain, crushing hope, breaking will. In every corner of the galaxy, people woke from dreams with sweat on their skin, hearing only the words, "Humanity has returned." The human leader stood before his people, his armor glinting under the cold lights of the flagship. His voice carried across the fleet, steady and strong. "We slept too long. The galaxy forgot us. It became weak, corrupt, and arrogant. Now we are awake. Now it will remember." His soldiers answered not with cheers, but with silence and discipline. They did not need to shout. Their unity was stronger than words. As the flagship turned slowly in the void, thousands of human warships aligned behind it, forming ranks like a wall of fire. The stars themselves seemed to dim before their presence. Across the galaxy, countless eyes watched the fleet's movement, their hearts shaking with fear and awe. Some saw doom, others saw deliverance. All felt the same truth: the galaxy's age had ended, and a new age was beginning. The final transmission came across every open channel, spoken in a voice that reached every world, every fleet, every home. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of destiny. "We have returned. The galaxy will remember humanity." The stars seemed to tremble. Worlds held their breath. Empires felt their walls crack. The fire that had been buried for ages now burned again, and nothing in existence could put it out. The galaxy shook. And it would never stop shaking.